Hello, my name is Fabiana Arlane, and I'm a scientist at Sanford Burnham Prebys, and I'm here to celebrate Women's History Month with two of my colleagues. Actually, they are indirectly two of my mentors because I am a postdoc and they are both PIs at the Institute. So I'm here with Dr. Swasti Harishaneran and Dr. Brooke Emerling. And we're going to talk a little bit about women in general and women in science. So starting with Swasti, could you describe a woman scientist who has inspired you or influenced your work?
Yeah, again, I actually don't have any formal female mentors because all of my mentors were male, my formal mentors, but I have had many women scientists actually very spontaneously and generously give their time to help me out, to guide me and support me, even though they didn't really formally get credit for any of my future successes. And most of them are still in my life and still mentoring me quite actively. I kind of don't want to really mention names because there are so many of them and I wouldn't want to leave any of them out. But my best experience or my favorite experience is actually with my first informal um, woman scientist mentor. And I was in a training program that she was running. And she was an immensely successful full professor running this training program, had a huge lab. And yet, all that I had heard of her as reputation wise was that, oh, she always wears dresses and skirts and she doesn't really take things seriously in a very sort of derogatory manner, really. And so when I first met with her, I had this impression of just this sort of fluffy woman who wasn't really going to know much about science or know much about me. And I went in with zero expectations, which I guess is sort of reflective of how even women scientists think about the women scientists sometimes, and the way science in general assigns us to these categories based on how we dress or how we look or how we talk. And we ended up having a really close relationship, and we still do. And it was mainly because it was for the first time, she was my first female mentor, and it was the first time I felt someone understood the problems that were very unique to me in how I was treated and how I had to navigate science and academia, because she was also a non-white female who had to work really hard to get to the position that she was in. And so she's still one of my favorite people, and I talk to her regularly because she's the only one who'll always remind me that I also need to breathe and eat and do all this stuff and not just be really hard on myself for the things that don't work or the struggles that I face in science. So she's definitely my favorite mentor. But I also want to give a shout out to my great aunt, who's a mathematician and not really a scientist. But she moved to the US when women were not really mathematicians at that time, and was a trailblazer in being a female mathematician and making choices just because she wanted to do something rather than because she was forced into it. And so she's always been an inspiration and continues to be an inspiration to me.
Thank you. What about you, Brooke?
So yeah, I think very similar to Swasti, where I informally I've never really had female mentors. I think that's just going with our generation too, where now Swasti and I are part of a generation where more females are becoming professors and scientists and leading the fields in biology. But yes, I had not had any, but I did have, I'd like to say, several throughout my career, men that were respectful and amazing men that really wanted to help women. And I think it's because they had really strong female, women in their life where their wives were also scientists that were great, and they had daughters that went on to be scientists. But yeah, even in, I'd have to say, my postdoc mentor, when I became pregnant with my first son, he was, ecstatic and excited, and it wasn't, a negativity that his postdoc was pregnant and, going to have a family. And so he was very supportive. So I've had that luxury of having very supportive men in my life as a scientist. And then as well as just, I think having colleagues were graduate school and postdoc females that we all now have become professors or are at biotech companies or started their own companies, and we've really just been a great support group. And it's I've had that luxury of having that, and we've just And even through the pandemic now, since we can't see each other, we have had now for over a year our Zoom Sunday happy hour, and we just always get online, wherever we are. Someone might be at the grocery store, someone might be in the lab, someone might be somewhere, but we get on just to say hi to each other and be support groups. So I've had, amazing women in that sense to be part of my life. So I'm fortunate.
And I think Brooke makes a really good point that most of us who got to this point, even this generation, the female scientists, we were often mentored formally by men, because it was one of the ways that you became successful was you went to labs that were basically run by successful men, often white men. And I hope Brooke's right that this generation is going to be different, and there's going to be a variety of successful labs.
So, yeah. Well, there's definitely more women becoming, I think, PIs and scientists and leading companies and things. So the future hopefully is bright.
Yeah, I am a hopeful as well. We are seeing way more now that I used to see when I was a student, and even in medicine, not just in science. So I think, yes, the future is bright. I'm really positive. And do you think there are specific challenges in your scientific career as a woman? And do you think there are changes that in the scientific system that can help specific women be successful in their careers in science?
You want to go first?
Could you? Okay, Brooke can go first.
Yes, I think there's lots of things, but the biggest thing, and I'm not speaking to majority, I think that's probably half and half, that women actually have children in science, but having the support system of having childcare or access to convenient childcare for women that want to have academic labs or run a research lab, I think is very important for the future. And actually, a lot of medical schools do this. They have daycare on campuses to support families that are at the university or institute. I think that's something that really needs to change. And then just, speaking to that, maternity and paternity leave for people that helping, even husbands and wives, or even, all walks of life, people that want to have children. So it's just being supportive of everybody in that want to have a family, that you can have a family and do really good science. And it's something that we need to change. And then just, I guess, also speaking to Swasti as well, is that women can wear lipstick and wear dresses and be scientists. I get that a lot when I go to a meeting and they're like, oh, your hair's down. Oh, you have makeup on. Oh, you're wearing heels. And they don't take you seriously. And it's just like, I can care about what I look like and be a really good scientist. So it's just like and people don't see that sometimes. And I think that's so so unfortunate. But yeah, I think Swasti can see them, because Swasti is always wearing dresses and heels too. So it's just like, we can do it, so it needs to change. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Brooke's spot on. I think the biggest challenge to being a female scientist, even today, is just being heard. Like, it's so difficult to be taken seriously. And then there are so many judgments made just based on how you look or how you sound, or, where you're from, that I think that puts a huge pressure on you to always be, bringing your A game, always being better than, because you have to prove that I can wear a dress, I can let my hair down and still be a scientist. Right? And I think that is a really unfair bias, and it's an implicit bias. And I think it's definitely prevalent today in academia. There are so many ways we can change it, and I think we are making these changes, but just not fast enough for me. For example, study sections still, at the NIH, still underrepresent women, even though the applicants are pretty much 50-50 in terms of men and women. And I think we definitely need more strong women at those study sections advocating for things that men might not understand. Like Brooke said, maybe someone took maternity leave, and that doesn't make them a bad scientist. It just makes them a good mother and a good scientist. And I think also there's a lot of administrative burden on women. Women are generally picked to do the sort of tasks that are kind of thankless. And the high visibility positions often go to men, like being on editorial boards or being invited to speak at the conferences. And I think that has to change as well. Women need to be chairs of conferences. Women need to be on editorial boards. Women need to be at those senior positions where they can then advocate for and promote inclusion of women at many more levels. Probably an added complexity is if you're a woman of color, because I think then it's even more precious because you're having more and more biases that you're having to fight against. When you look at the stats for women getting grants funded, or even the dollar amount of the grants that they do get funded, they're still woefully lower than men. And I don't think women are inherently worse at writing grants or doing their science than men. So clearly there's some sort of bias at play that has to be removed, and it won't be removed unless women have equal participation at the highest levels. And I think that's what we're working towards. And hopefully as women like Brooke get to that position, they'll be there to make it easier for trainees who follow us.
Yeah, definitely. I would. I agree with you. I would, if I could name like one big challenge, I would say implicit bias and institutional bias, and I think that's something that must change. And I think that what Brooke said, that people don't expect me to wear makeup or look like this, like it's just the stereotypical scientist, female scientist that people like first think. We can see in the movies like male scientists, they're always wearing lab coats and glasses, and women scientists, they are kind of like the sexy way that they are depicted.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because, my husband's in the business world, where if a woman didn't wear heels or lipstick at where he was, then she would be like, oh my God, like, what is she doing? Where it's like the total opposite for us. Like, you can't win.
Exactly. You can win, because even like people are gonna mention something about the way you look regardless, I think. And they never, like, it's really rare to do that with men. Like, and it's also the way the society sees women. So women, I think people still in general expect women to look and behave in something like I don't know. So usually they have like long hair, etc. So people are still, I think, going over those stereotypical ways of women, how they should act or how they should be. And this is, in the end, it's implicit bias that we also get into sciences as well.
Yeah, but I think it's also like when you look at HHMI investigators, for example, they're almost always white men. Mm-hmm. And those positions not just come with a lot of prestige, but they also come with a lot of money. Yeah. And they come with the freedom for you to do the sort of science that you want to do. And I think there've been all these issues where we talk about, when you look at the review panels, they're also made of white men. And so to them, when they think about what does an HHMI investigator look like, they're thinking, of them. Like themselves, that they're represented. And they're definitely not thinking, Swasti Haricharan, like some little brown girl from India is going to be what I think an HHMI investigator looks like, right? And I think that's a huge problem, because then you have to have science that is so impressive and credentials that are so impressive that the burden of proof becomes almost intolerable for you to just be on a level playing field. And I think that really, really has to change.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And if you could give one piece of advice to young women interested in science as a career, what would that be? You can go first, Swasti.
Okay. I think I am definitely not negative about women doing science as a career, but I think women who are planning to do it, or actually even men who are planning to do it today, science really has to give you a lot of joy if you want to pursue this as a career, because there are so many roadblocks and challenges and times when nothing's going right, and you're definitely not paid like a rock star or even kind of for the number of hours you work. And so if you don't get joy out of it, if you don't get joy out of what you're doing, then it's totally not worth it. Like, I think you would be mad to do science if it isn't something that you feel just makes your day or makes your year, really, sometimes. And so I would say, just think about it. If it doesn't give you joy, don't do it. There are so many better ways to live your life. That's not a negative.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Following your passion, and I think that's why Swasti and I do this, is I couldn't see myself do anything else, and I'm passionate. That's why we, it's like, it's crazy, all the negatives and the roadblocks you have, everything, but you just have to get through it. And so I would say, don't give up. If you really are passionate about this and you want to do, don't give up. And I think most importantly, for how I've gotten to this level, I mean, I've had so many failures that you just can't give up. But also finding good mentors, whether it be a female or a male, just finding someone that really cares and is passionate about science like you and wants to help people. And that's what I have had the luxury of having some of those people in my life, and I couldn't have done it without them. So, and I know a lot of people that are way smarter than me and have so many, but they just had really terrible mentors and they quit. So I think just surrounding yourself in an environment that gives you pleasure and happiness, that is going to make you, I mean, you work really long hours in the lab and this becomes your life. And you can't, if you don't like it, then you're just making yourself miserable. Oh, and one more thing is just, if you do have a significant other, that just finding someone that really respects you as a scientist, because my husband is not a scientist, but he understands that how long hours I'm going to work. He knows, and he's just like, okay, you're going to go to lab. Okay, see you in 15 hours. Like it's no big deal. So he knows that that's it. So you just have to surround yourself with people that understand your passion and are cheerleaders for you, I suppose. So yeah.
Yeah, 100% you need cheerleaders. You need
you need cheerleaders. Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and like Brooke said earlier, you do need a support group, like whether it's your peers or family or whoever. You just need someone who will understand, whom you can talk about your failures with. They make it seem less catastrophic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. And I would also say, also, even though like we need to find good mentors, like even though, for example, your PI, technically it's your first mentor, but like go ahead and I think reach out to other PIs as well. It's always good to have like other mentors, not just one, because it changes your perspective on everything. And I would also say, like, don't compare yourself to other scientists, because like your journey is unique as theirs. So doesn't mean that you're not going to getting there because you haven't done specifically what the other or your mentor has done in the past. I have one last question, because we talked about like the future is bright. Like we do have more women now getting to science. And so maybe in the future, hopefully the changes will come faster and we have more women in leadership positions. So do you think that getting there, maybe we will have like people would be more mindful about work-life balance, and also the pandemic changed that a lot. Do you think that getting women in leadership positions, we're gonna have more of that, like people actually concerned about, okay, you're expected to have long hours in the lab, but like if you need to spend some time off, it's also something that's going to happen. What do you think about that? You can go first, Brooke, if you would like to.
Yeah, I think honestly we have a long way to go still. I mean, I envision that it's going to get better, and I think it's getting better. I think there are people, because the people that are in science right now that are at our level, assistant professors or even postdocs or even associate professors, are women. So maybe in 10 so years we're going to see more women in leadership positions and things that will happen, more people on study sections and things like this, and HHMI women. So I hope that that will happen. And there's amazing women at our colleagues that they're going to be taking over. I mean, even just now you read any journal, I mean, a lot of papers are coming out from amazing women run labs, and it's bright. And I hope that, but you know, I think the pandemic actually made it worse for us.
For women, yes.
Yeah, so I think that it's even harder now. And the work-life balance, there is no work-life balance now. And so I hope that in the next couple of years we can get out of this and get back to women starting to, you know, persevere and get those leadership positions. But I don't know. So I'm optimistic, and I hope, and that, you know, I have the postdocs in my lab and the people that I see here, they're so bright. And so hopefully the future is bright. But I don't know, Swasti, you probably add on to that, because yeah, this pandemic, and we're not out of this yet. I mean, I'm already done. This year's already done. I'm thinking about 2022, hopefully, and I'm praying that my kids will be back in school. So it's, you know, it's just strange times, but yeah.
Yeah, I actually think those are two different questions, because I don't think necessarily women getting into leadership positions will promote work-life balance.
Okay.
Because a lot of times I think women who made it to that point didn't have work-life balance. And
that's true. That's very true.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
So I kind of know, and actually even in my experience, even with my female mentors, and they're all really successful scientists, the majority of them, I don't think, have great work-life balance either. Like, I think it's really hard to maintain that. And I think the more years you do this and realize how little work-life balance you have, I think there's a tendency to start forgetting that other people need work-life balance. So I'm actually not optimistic that having more women necessarily will improve that, but I hope just this generation,
In
men
general.
or women,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I think we are more cognizant of it, even with our trainees, and hopefully that's something, that's a culture that we'll remember to bring with us as we move up. I always worry about it, and my friends and I talk about whether there's this process of moving up in science that just sort of batters all the humanity out of you because it's so ruthless and difficult to get up there. I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult to maintain work-life balance, and as the sort of the balance shifts, because it starts feeling like you're doing more and more work to maintain the standard that you've achieved, and then it becomes harder and harder to realize that work-life balance is important. But I am optimistic that our generation is better than previous, that we are more cognizant, both for ourselves and for our trainees. So I'm optimistic on that front, but not that bringing more women in will necessarily change it as much.
It's more like a generational change. Like, it's like you're changing the mindset of everybody. It's not just specific because we have more women, right?
And I don't even know how much credit we can take, because I think this generation of docs and trainees, like the millennials, they are pretty resistant to having their work-life balance. And I think that they're pretty clear in their heads about how they want to do science and what science means to them, and whether they're having a healthy relationship with it or an unhealthy relationship. And I think that they make a pretty strong case for themselves and are not afraid to say things like, I need to take a break, or I'm going to go on maternity leave because that's just what I need to do right now. And I think that it's the combination of those two. It's, I think, scientists like Brooke and me who are willing to listen, and then the new generation of trainees who are willing to ask for what they need. And I think together, I do believe that's going to lead to a more holistic, balanced approach to science than what we've had so far. So I'm also optimistic.
Yeah, this is great. So people ready to ask and people ready to listen. This is a great, yes.
You need both, no?
Yes, you do. And thank you so much, both of them, Swasti and Brooke. And I just wanted to acknowledge again, if you're not my direct PIs, my direct mentors, you are mentors to me. And I think you are great women, and not just as scientists. You are just good people to talk to. And I've had great conversations with both of you, non-scientific conversations. So again, thank you for support, and I'm glad that you are at the institute. So you are mentors that I can look up to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you.